trade rumors surrounding David Savard are going insane with so many different reports, all saying different things about whether he should, shouldn't, what the value is for him. There's a lot of stuff we got to break down, so you're going to want to stick around right to the end for that. But first, we got to talk a bit about Juraj Slafkovsky and a note on just how impactful he has been since being on the top line. Stick around for all of that on this episode of Habs Digest. We're going to get straight into it. We got to talk about Juraj Slafkovsky. I know we talked about him last night, but we're talking about him again. And he is destroying the narrative around him. Even still, to this point in the season, there are still people out there who are citing his advanced stats, using the full season or his full career as a talking point, saying, well, look, his numbers aren't that good, even though he was 18 when he started. And in an article today, Marc Dumont kind of goes over that, and it's kind of true. He says, like, it's okay to take these stats that make him look bad, but you got to take the context. For example, in 89 games, the Habs have only controlled the puck for a bit over 46%, over 46% of the shots, 45% of the expected goals. His points per 60 is really bad, below Hoffman and Drouin over that full sample size, but he has 15 points in his last 21, Jesse. But the big thing is when you look at his advanced numbers and then you remove some of the noise, really. When he was with Josh Anderson, look at that, 38% of the shots, 36% of expected goals, 0% of actual goals. But then when you remove him, he's around 50% across the board, which is very palatable. But his biggest impact's been on the top line, where without him on the top line with Suzuki and Caufield, they just control 43% of the high danger shots, and consequently their expected goals hovered a bit above 45%. But with Slafkovsky, all of those have risen, and including above goals percentage has risen above 50%, which essentially means like they are outplaying other teams' top lines with Slav there. His impact cannot be understated.
Yeah, absolutely. And top players need to play with top players, as this number shows. And for sure, there's kind of that development of him getting in the league, finding his bearings and kind of getting to that point, right? But we've seen not only has he benefited from playing with good line mates, but also really benefited them as well. So for me, we're really happy with Slav. For sure, those haters are going to come in sometimes, but he is completely as advertised. When we were drafting him, Slav said himself, we're looking for a first line player to play with Nick and Cole, and that's exactly what we've gotten in him, so it's so nice to see. I feel like he's a little bit of a project, but so's this team. So it's all good, right? Like, just as he's gonna peak, so's this team really as well, so it's so nice just him just getting his confidence. Of course, this is like, he's a young player. We didn't expect him to be a generational talent. He's just improved that normal sort of progression, and now with him just taking these huge steps in his game where he looks like definitely like a bona fide first line player. Not only that, a first line that actually dominates the play, gets the majority of the expected high danger opportunities, outplaying other top lines in the league. I mean, you have to be happy with the development so far.
100%. And like you said, when we drafted him, there was a lot of talk about who the Habs should have drafted, shouldn't have drafted. But a lot of the intangibles were there. But also, like, when you watched him in the Olympics, like, his confidence was off the charts. And when he got to the NHL, you could tell he's confident in himself, but when he was actually on the ice, like, he's kind of not sure when to defer, when to shoot. And now that he's learning how to shoot, the league is, it's over. Slafkovsky's going to take over, When you look at that draft class, at this point, obviously it's still early, I don't think there's anyone I would take over Slafkovsky from that draft class at this point, and I'm actually seeing a lot of people agree with that sentiment. Of course, some people citing Simon Nemec, a fellow Slovakian. I might agree with that, just because in the last 20-ish games, they've had similar point production, which is pretty interesting. But all in all, Jesse, I think maybe the biggest improvement for me is just his sense of, like, I know he kind of knew where to be earlier on in his career, but like now it feels like every time I see Slafkovsky, he's in the right spot, or at least making room for someone else to be in the right spot. He's making the winning plays. And as Jaromir Jagr said, I don't know if a lot of you guys, I don't think we talked about this quote on the show before, but Jagr once said he saw Slafkovsky playing. He's like, wow, he makes those winning plays. His work along the boards is insane. He said, I want him on my team. And he said, when I heard he was 17, I know I would have no chance to get him. So, and it's those things that are manifesting themselves now at the NHL level, Jesse, and I feel like there's nowhere to go but up.
And he was the right pick. And it's because not only does he have the talent, but stylistically, just a perfect match with Nick and Cole, where he can win those puck battles and kind of get the puck to them. A very good passer, not only kind of winning those puck battles along the boards, but then also having the talent to be able to finish it, when the puck comes his way as well. So I feel like it's definitely that type of balance where of kind of that physicality, but also with that skill that this line really, really needed. So important where we're searching for that top line for so long. It even almost seems to go back to the days of Drouin, right? Of really searching for that top line. The fact that we've actually completed this with Juraj Slafkovsky is definitely something we have to take for granted and recognize what we have here.
100%. He's doing some amazing, amazing things, and hope he continues on a 66 post All-Star break goal pace. That's yeah. Well, we got him for 50 goals this year. That's what we got to do. But we got to move on. We got to talk about some other trade stuff, some big trade news coming out, all about David Savard, and we already know Kent Hughes is a mastermind with trades. Let Kent Hughes cook, okay?
Someone cooked here.
He's cooking. Kent Hughes is going to continue to cook, and he's going to continue to cook with David Savard, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about. So the first thing I want to bring up is Pierre Lebrun saying he actually doesn't believe the Montreal Canadiens want to trade Savard for all kinds of internal organizational reasons. He said if someone sends him an offer that really makes him think, then yeah, he could be dealt. And when we're talking about like an offer that they can't refuse, well, let's just take a look at what Marco D'Amico, Habs insider and writer for Montreal Hockey Now, had to say. In response to Georges Larac and Gonzo and BPM Sport talking about whether Savard might be worth a second, D'Amico said that if Savard's available, you can bet your bottom dollar he's netting a first plus. The right-handedness, coveted defensive style, his cap hit, the Stanley Cup experience, and improved offensive touch in Montreal would make him highly sought after. And he goes on to cite the fact that the right-handed defenseman market is really barren right now with like Chris Tanev on the block, but that's kind of about it. Jesse, if the Habs got offered a first plus for Savard, do you think that would fit the criteria that LeBron is maybe talking about? Maybe Kent Hughes has in his head of an offer that you almost can't refuse?
Kent will take another first round draft pick, even though it might seem redundant at this point. They are very valuable. It's almost like we have so many of them, we kind of forget just how important they are. Absolutely. And I don't know if it'll maybe be a first that necessarily Savard goes for if he's traded, but it'll have to be a good return. All the same, whatever sort of combination that takes on a player's prospects, picks, whatever form that is, because he definitely does offer a lot to this team. He's definitely turned a corner, I think, in the minds of a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans. Again, definitely endearing himself to us when he's saving goals, acting as another goaltender on the ice on so many times. But again, I really like just how he's able to manage the front of the net, just kind of, making sure that we're looking after a goalie. And that's something that's very important, especially with a young player and just, having a presence of a vet to kind of do these things definitely is a given. Not every defenseman is that type of player, that guard dog, around the net that Savard is. So I definitely appreciate him for that, for his effort. But, I wouldn't be surprised if Kent Hughes is looking to do kind of like a sell high type of move, and type of thing. We know sometimes, D-men, their games can go off a cliff. We got a lot of, young guys coming up. We definitely want to keep some vets, but the question is like, is it going to be Matheson or is it going to be Savard kind of the vets that we do keep? Because I think, in regards to both of them, it's one or the other. We'll need to make a decision soon. But I mean, feel with like Mike Matheson and Kent Hughes, like they probably go to each other's home for Thanksgiving dinner. Like they're tight, they're close. So it's like, I don't necessarily see that trade, kind of being done. But I mean, a right-handed defenseman all the same that's won a Stanley Cup, he's going to have some value.
Yeah, he's going to have a market, that's for sure. And I know people will point to the underlying metrics. I mean, we've pointed to that too, that show that he's really not been that great. But again, I think part of that's a product of him having to play a lot of minutes in a top pairing role for one of the bottom defensive teams in the league. And he's going up against other top lines. And that's not what he should be on a cup winning team. And he's a fantastic player, quite good defensively when he's at his best. And so he is going to be valued. But again, yeah, like his point production this year has gone up, like Marco D'Amico said, and there's not much of a market out there for right-handed defensemen. In the sense, I mean, there's not many players out there. A lot of teams are going to want them, and there's not a whole lot of supply. So I think he'll get an offer. But at the end of the day, Jesse, I think the last thing you want to do if you're Montreal is to throw all of your young defensemen to the dogs. We talk all the time about letting these guys play, letting them develop, right? Give them minutes. Not everyone is going to work out that way. Sometimes you need that guidance. I mean, so one example, for example, Ottawa, like they had some veterans. That's true. It's not like, it's sort of analogous to this situation, but what you don't want to do is just let them out there and just kind of see what happens. Sometimes the development can get stunted, and that's the last thing we want because of a lot of our best prospects are defensemen. We have Xhekaj, who's still developing. Of course, Guhle, who maybe has had not the best last few months, still has the upside of being a top pairing guy. You got Reinbacher, you got Hudson, you got Mailloux coming up through the ranks. You still have Barron, who you're not sure about. I think just having that mentorship is extremely valuable to these guys, and you got to think that that's part of the reason Kent Hughes might not want to move him, even if they get offered a high draft pick.
Absolutely. You need to kind of have that balance of keeping the key vets, but then also the prospects that you have as part of your future. So it's really going to be up to Kent Hughes to figure out who doesn't fit into that sort of criteria. That's why I've explained before on the show that I really believe that there is a high likelihood of a Jonathan Kovacevic being traded, not so much for the return that we can get, but really freeing up that spot while still keeping the vets where we need them, while giving a little bit of time to evaluate, the Jordan Harris's type players, Justin Barron's that we're still not sure of all the way, that are still valued. So definitely they have a little bit more of a runway. That's why I would see that type of mood coming around this trade deadline as probably being a happy balance.
Yeah, there's going to be some more moves, and I mean it just feels that way, right? The Guhle carousel, that probably has to be solved, even though Hughes said he might not do it this season. Savard or Matheson, maybe one of them will get traded, even though Hughes said he's not actively shopping them. The thing is, I believe him. I don't necessarily think he's out there actively shopping them, but I feel like teams are coming calling. But anyway, we can talk about this for days. What do you guys think? Is Savard getting moved? And if he is he really going to fetch more than a first? Is that the kind of offer that Kent Hughes maybe just can't refuse if he gets it? We'd love to hear from you down in the comment section below. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We have daily Habs content coming your way. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.